All right. So next up is Peter Frank. Peter Frank serves at Concordia Publishing House as Senior Marketing Manager for Church Supplies, which includes Concordia Technology Solutions, the Church Management Software Division. I think I got that all, Pete.
I think you got it, Seth.
Okay. Just a quick word on Pete. Pete continues to amaze me at the depth of understanding he has for content marketing. If you ask him about HubSpot and inbound marketing and content frameworks, he could go on for days, and it's all good stuff. I'm always encouraged when I talk to Peter, and I hope you feel the same way with this presentation. So thanks for leading us in this content frameworks discussion, Peter.
You're very welcome, Seth. Thanks for leading us as MC today. It's great to get this conference off the ground and running. We've been talking about it for, it seems like, years now, and I'm just really excited that it all came together, and we've got such a large audience. We had over 500 people sign up, so thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and transition over to my slides now. So we'll get that set up. All right, so I think I've got us up and running, showing my screen. So we should see the title slide. So today I'm going to be talking about content framework in the church. And what that means is kind of a different term, but I'll get into that in a second. Before I do that, a little bit more about myself. Seth did a great introduction. I put my contact information out there. I love to hear from people in the field who are working in churches, doing communication, using technology in the ministry. In fact, right before we got on, I got an email from somebody who'd been attending some of my training sessions. Would you mind taking a look at our website and give us your feedback? And I'm excited to do that. So please go ahead, send that to me. I won't get back to you as quickly as I'm sure I would like, but I'd love to see what you've got. A little bit about me personally. I've been married to my wife, Laura, for 10 years this week. We're celebrating our anniversary on Friday, so I'm headed out of town after this. We've got two wonderful kids, Sawyer and Melody, and I think I've got my monitor too high. You can't see all the pictures in the background, but I built my first church website about 17 years ago, and since then I've been hooked on communication in the church, leveraging technology. Back then it was kind of a new thing. I was a teenager, and of course the churches use the teenagers to get their website up and running, and I think that's still true for many today. But it was a great way to get me interested in the ministry and in communications. So I encourage you to do that with the youth in your congregation. My actual education background is in theological languages, so a little bit different than you might expect. So didn't learn HTML in those theological languages. So today we're talking about content framework, and what is a content framework? So it's an organized manner of distributing your content across all of your communication channels to lead your audience through a defined journey map. And that's a very complicated way of saying it's a strategy for sharing content. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Now, a few definitions as we begin. So what is content? Content has kind of grown a big name over the last few years. You may have heard the phrase content is king. That's thrown around in marketing circles quite a bit. Content is the value you are sharing. And that doesn't necessarily mean written, although that seems to be the most common. But as Evan was talking about, video has become the big piece of content now. And there's still other things, photos, I mean, with social sharing and everything else, that's all different content. And when you think about the content that you produce in the church, there's a lot of it. And it's a lot that you do on a regular basis without even necessarily thinking in terms of communication. But when you think about your sermons, your Bible studies, Sunday school lessons, devotions that you might lead at staff meeting, all of that is content, and it has value for your audience, no matter who they are, and you can contextualize it. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about, is how to distribute that content to the right audiences. Next thing that we're going to define is channels. Channels are the places you share content, and these are becoming more and more as we go. Social media has just allowed content to take on a life of its own, and we have content creators all over the places. You have content creators in your church who aren't on the staff. As you think about the members and what they're sharing on social media, either about themselves or about their faith life, that is content that is out connected to your church because of who the members are. There may be things that you can own, that you manage, like your email newsletters or your website. Those are different channels for you to distribute content to your audience. And so as we look at these channels, we're going to give each one kind of a different purpose for how they share content. And so the framework then becomes the way you choose what content to share on each channel. And it's an idea that I heard from Chris Brogan. He's a well-known speaker and blogger and just a fantastic communicator. He's written a number of books. It was at a local digital marketing conference, and he was a keynote speaker. And this was just something he kind of set as an aside during his presentation, this idea of a framework. And that's the part that really struck home for me. And so after I got back, I looked up all his stuff online, and I found a post from years earlier where he really dug into this idea of a content framework. And so I've taken that to apply it in the church context, and that's what we're going to look at here. So first off, there are different phases, and the first phase is what you call your outpost. Your outposts are places where you have conversations, and you see the definition there: short format, two-way communication. Now, this may be social media. That's the most primary way of two-way short communication. So Facebook, Twitter is still relevant today. Instagram, there's plenty more. I mean, Snapchat is becoming more and more relevant among certain audiences. Others like LinkedIn and Pinterest, maybe not as much for the church, but certainly within day-to-day life, people are using that. But think about your church and how they're using social media, or how you're using social media, I should say. Is your Facebook account just a bulletin board where you post information out for everybody to see, or are you actually engaging with the members of your congregation? And that's the value of Outposts, is that this is where people are spending their time. This is where you can talk with them and learn from them and hear what they're looking for, what they need, and in a really dynamic way. Now, the other ones on there are search and paid advertising. Now, these seem a little funny as two-way communication, but essentially that's what it is. It's the user, the person searching for something, and you as the church providing something back. And so if you're going into Google and they're searching for churches in my area and your website comes up, you're having a conversation there that is maybe not active. You don't know that's going on, but you're setting that up there. And we'll talk about websites more today too. But these outposts are where you can have these conversations, and that should be the primary purpose of Outposts, is that it's just two-way dialogue. Now, that's different from the next tier, which is your media empire, as Chris Brogan defines it. And it sounds so big and consuming, but it's really quite practical. This is your correspondence. That's the goal of the media empire. This is longer format and one-way communication. So when you think about what has traditionally been done in the church with weekly bulletins or maybe monthly or quarterly newsletters, that was your media empire. That's where you would put everything in. That's what you would push out to your congregation. And that has changed now to be things like YouTube, where you're putting your video content, or Vimeo could be on there as well, your blog or any other syndicated content where it's continuously updated with the latest and the greatest. And email still has a very relevant place in communications today. And it's shifting. Evan mentioned this too. There's so many things, there's tie-in here, how it's less about mass pushing of information and much more targeted. And that's what these channels allow you to do. And this allows you to create kind of a hub for all of your great information, your great content that's being shared. And so as you think about things that are helpful resources, sermons that could be turned into blog posts that can go deeper into the message of this week, that's where you can share this. And it's within your own control, within your environment, where that's the primary purpose of that site. And then you can use your social media to bring people to your outpost, to direct people to your media channel and consume this content. Now, the third phase in here is the home base. And this is the final destination. This is where you control the entire environment. When you think about things like Facebook, if someone once said that when you're marketing on Facebook, you're competing against family and funny cats. And that's really what it comes down to when you're on social media, is that there is a lot of content from other sources competing with your own. And while that's where the attention is, you are vying for that attention. And even in your media empire, like within the inbox, when you're sending your email, or within YouTube, there is other things there that are distracting people. While yours may be the primary purpose, the primary thing they're reading, there's still other distractions that are going on. Now, your church website becomes your home base where you own everything in that context, where you create an environment for people to engage with your church and not be distracted by everything else. And the goal for there is conversion. And it's not conversion in the altar call kind of thing where we're converting them to Christ. We know that the Holy Spirit does that work. That's not what we're there for. But conversions in terms of the goals of your congregation, conversions into getting them to take that next step, whatever that may be. And so maybe the conversion is to sign up for VBS. I know a lot of churches have VBS going on this week. If you have your registration form on your website, everything can lead to that. And so that's what we're looking at is directing people from one of these stages to the next. So you start with your outposts where people are focusing their attention, and you give them an opportunity to read more of your content, to learn more of your content, to watch it. And that drives them to your media empire, where you can have that long format, that strong content there, and that can drive them into the home base where you have those conversions. So I think we've got some additional conversation going on here. Okay, I think we should be good now. So, all right, sorry to get distracted. I had voices in my ears. All right, so we talk about how you go from outpost to media empire to home base. You're always drawing your audience closer and closer to you. Now, the benefit of this, why is this so important? Well, the benefit is that it emphasizes movement on this journey map. And journey maps are something we could get into in a lot more detail. But essentially, it's moving your audience from a place of disconnectedness to being connected within the church and with hearing the gospel. And the path along the way may be different for each church. It may be that your goal is to get people to worship, or another church's goal is to get people to the fellowship event. However that is, the framework allows movement to go from one place to the next. So the other thing that I really like about this is that it downplays the importance of any one channel. And as things are constantly changing, new channels are being introduced, new social media is becoming more and more relevant each day. 2 years ago, who would have thought that churches were talking about Snapchat? That was kind of the thing that you shouldn't be on because of its reputation. Well, now it's starting to become relevant in the churches. So if something changes, if something disappears or loses its significance, that doesn't mean that your strategy is lost. It gives each channel a specific purpose. And so rather than trying to post the same message and get the same results on all different channels, you're leveraging each one for their strengths rather than trying to make it play the same game. And so when you share something on Facebook, you know that the results are going to be different than posting something on your blog. Lastly, it allows you to give each message a clear call to action. That goes back to that movement, a call to action where there's a next step, a logical next step for the end user to move. So they're moving from social media to your media empire, to your website, ultimately to conversion. So here's the framework in action, and just showing it in a little bit of a broader view. What I would recommend is, as you put together campaigns, start to template this out so that it's easier, so that when you're launching a new event, let's say a new children's ministry event, you can start looking at it and say, okay, what are we going to do from a search or a pay-per-click standpoint? How do we want to frame this site so that people can find it in Google? And from there, what do we want to do on social media that will direct people to that? Maybe it's content about things to do in the summer with your kids. And so you want to share that on Facebook to get people to your blog. And from there, you can talk about your VBS, which takes them deeper into your website where they can register and convert. And so you're going from conversations to your correspondence, that one-way push, all the way to the conversions. So using the content framework, how do you go about doing this? Well, first you define the end goal and work backwards. So what are those conversion points in your church? Where is it that you are hoping your members will move, or your visitors will go? What's that next step? Define that and then work backwards. Establish those desired movements, those call to actions that you're going to have people to take the next step to. And that shapes what you will share. create enough appropriate content, and enough is such a vague term, but that really will vary depending on your church and your situation. What is enough? Well, it's enough when you get the results that you're looking for. But it's enough to keep it interesting, to engage the reader, to engage the viewer, to engage your audience. And I probably shouldn't put reader there, but just whoever that user is, whether it's video that you're sharing on a regular basis, whether it's a blog post or some form of content, it's keeping the end user engaged so that they move all the way through the end. So one key warning, don't send your audience backwards. And I see this a lot with churches, where their church website is pushing people to their social media, which is taking them farther away. And how often do we get distracted on social media? Now, you want to send people to move forward, move your audience forward from those points of more distraction, from those points of varied content, closer and closer to the home base, where you can convert them and engage them in your church. So that is the content framework for our presentation today. I'll be joining you a little bit later for the next session. There's my contact information again. I'd love to hear how you are implementing this framework in your church already. And maybe it wasn't a defined strategy, but I see more and more churches that are just utilizing these channels to the best of their abilities, and it's looking really good. So thank you guys very much. Seth, back to you.
All right, thank you, Peter. And we are getting a lot of questions in the chat window here. I've asked the speakers to kind of hop in there and answer some questions for you right now, because we can't get to them all and stay on schedule right now. So we're going to head into the break and maybe answer a couple of questions with all three presenters here, right, as we transition to the next section. So keep typing in your questions. We'll get to them.